So what I did basically is cut my poster up in little sections so that I can go through them and you can have a look at the individual sections on my poster. Because if I would just chuck the whole poster on this slide, you would probably not be able to read anything. So yeah, thank you for having me digitally. My name is Jolie. I'm based at the University of Kent, and I'm part of the social team of the ARC. And I did this work together with Dr. Rebecca Atkinson. Don't know if she's there, but give her away if she is. And John Hammond. This was not so much a piece of research as such, but more consultation before the research. And I'll get to that in a second when I talk about the aims and objectives, but it was really important for us to consult with the people that the research was going to be about, to talk about the specifics of the research question, to talk about what research could do to support them and those groups. And before I go into the project, I just wanted to highlight this acronym LGBTQ+, and you probably have seen it a lot this month, Pride Month. And some people are a bit confused by this acronym getting longer and longer. But I think the first four are quite self-explanatory. So most people understand lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans. Then the Q stands for queer, which is quite a sort of umbrella term that people use. And it's really personal how people identify, and it can change over time. So people shouldn't be held to one label if they feel like they then want to change the label. It's completely personal. And this acronym really includes both gender identity, so that, for example, relates to trans, but also sexual identity, which relates more to being lesbian, gay, or bisexual. And then the plus includes several different identities. They're not all represented here, and it's a very long list. I could probably speak an hour about that. But amongst those are intersex, asexual, agender, and pangender. So just wanted to give that little bit of background to make sure that we all are on the same page about what we're talking about here. And then, so this can be seen as a minoritized group. So heterosexual is the norm, and cisgender, which means that you identify with the sex that was assigned to you at birth, is the norm. People who are part of the LGBTQ+ community are therefore a minority group. And in this case, we're talking about two minority groups because it's also about older individuals. So the project, we organized two online consultation groups where we met with people who were older. So that was mostly 60, 65 plus, and who were part of the LGBTQ+ community. But we also met with care providers, and these were all together in the same group. And we came together to talk about the current state of inclusive practice related to LGBTQ+ in residential care for older people. So is there any inclusive practice? Are LGBTQ+ identities considered at all? If not, which the literature suggests? What can we do? How can research support to improve the situation? So our aims and objectives were to involve this minoritized group on both older and sexual identity and gender identity in adult social care research, and hear their voices, have them included. But also, as I said at the beginning, to really have our research questions be informed by the needs and the priorities of the people the research is for. So rather than us inferring or assuming this is probably what they need or what they want, we really want to make sure that those research questions are informed by the voices of the people that the research will be about, which also includes residential care providers. And then these consultations were really used as a foundational activity to then develop a larger research project where we could promote LGBTQ+ inclusive practice in residential care. So our achievements so far, the consultation those two meetings took place in January and December. So last January and then in December before that, so about 6 months ago. And first of all, we really gathered knowledge, more in-depth knowledge on the experiences from older LGBTQ plus individuals who either had some experience in respite care or daycare, or they had partners who had been in residential care. And what we saw very strongly is that there was this big fear of discrimination from staff, but also from other residents. And people felt like maybe it was their only option was to hide their sexuality or gender as soon as they would go into residential care to be safe. There were also concerns around if there would be an interaction between cognitive impairments and dementia and sexuality or gender identity. So for example, maybe if you develop memory problems, you don't remember that you are open about your sexuality, or maybe you've forgotten that you haven't told anyone. So people were really worried about that, like, how am I going to be able to protect myself and my own identity if I have to deal with cognitive impairments? And they were worried that care staff maybe weren't skilled to deal with that. And then there were also worries about whether the significant people in their life would be treated equally to those of heterosexual people. So for example, if there is a partner, but maybe they are not married to their partner, would they be treated with the same respect, and would they be involved in to the same extent in their care? Then we also discussed barriers to inclusive practice. So what currently are the barriers? What do we need to overcome to ensure that residential care is a safer and more comfortable space for LGBTQ plus elders? So one of the barriers is that there is a lack of staff understanding and skill around sexuality and gender, and also about why sexuality and gender are relevant for care. So a lot of people say it doesn't matter if someone is gay or straight or whatever label they want to use. It doesn't matter to me, I treat everyone the same. But that sort of neglects the idea that sexuality and gender are important to someone, and they want to be able to still express that individuality whilst they are in care. There's also an absence of clear and specific guidance and regulation related to LGBTQ plus inclusive care. There's not very much included in CQC guidance. Commissioners usually don't have a very specific protocol regarding inclusive practice. So that could be a way of improving the situation. And there's also just a lack, which obviously a lot of issues boil down to that, is that there's a lack of available funding and time to really invest in training. There's often a willingness we experienced, but there's not always the time and capacity to invest in that. So the needs are an intervention that improves staff knowledge and how to be more inclusive. And when I say staff, I mean the whole range of the workforce. So that includes managers, that includes people who work in the kitchen, cleaners, people who work directly as care staff, and why it matters that people have that knowledge. We need to have something that's feasible to implement in the current care climate. That's why it's important that we also involve care providers as stakeholders, but that's also sustainable. So it's not something that's a one-off that's going to maybe change the situation for a couple of months and then people forget about it again. We want something that's sustainable and long-lasting, and it also needs to be co-developed by stakeholders from both the LGBTQ plus community and care provision side to make sure that it works for everyone and that it can be implemented in practice. So those were the findings from our consultation exercise. And based on that, we've built some great, strong links with people working in the voluntary sector, working in this field in academia, more senior researchers, also people working in the local authorities. And based on that knowledge and those connections, we are now working on a stage 2 application to build a research project around this, to really focus in on the implementation of LGBTQ plus inclusive practice and how care support care providers can be supported to implement inclusive practice. So just taking a step back and looking at more generally what we have learned. One of the big things that we learned through this consultation was how important it is to take the historical context into account. So people who are of an age now that they would potentially think about going into residential care have lived through a lot of years of discrimination and criminalization. They've lived through Section 28, for example. They have lived through very vivid memories of the HIV epidemic. And this is all very important contextual information for how much confidence they have in care providers and how comfortable they feel about being themselves. And I think that's something that we need to take with us into a next project, and also really make care staff aware of how much that has maybe impacted on people's lives. Co-production was a very strong element that kept coming back to us, and we already went into this consultation thinking that was an important element, but it was really confirmed that we need to involve the different stakeholders around the table. So that's care providers, care commissioners, the public, the LGBTQ+ community in creating this solution. So we need to involve everyone to make sure that it works for everyone and that it's an actual meaningful and feasible intervention. And then I think related to this topic, it's very important to always use openness and respect. So a lot of people were very open about their experience. It's a sensitive topic to discuss. You need to make sure from the provider and commissioner side that we don't focus on calling anyone out on doing something wrong, but really focusing on positive change and how can people be supported to make that positive change. And at the same time, respecting that people from the LGBTQ+ community have often had very negative experiences, and honor those experiences and see how that affects the way they think about care currently. So what has really excited us in this project was that we received so much great encouragement from the people we spoke to. And I personally find it just heartwarming to see that you're doing something that's really meaningful to people. We've spoken to people that have left their home country in search of more inclusive care, people that have spent years and years advocating for this, and it's just incredible to see that encouragement that we can hopefully take one step in the right direction to make the situation better. We've also had a wide range of organizations supporting us. It says C-section to the right, but that was on the actual poster. I'll put that up in a second. And it's been really encouraging to get all those sometimes quite big organizations on board on this project, to see that we're really doing something that matters. And we really want to create something meaningful that's actually going to change practice. So here you can see the different organizations I just mentioned. So we've worked with a couple of local authorities, West Sussex, East Sussex, Brighton and Hove, have all been incredibly supportive. We're working with the University of Surrey and the University of Hertfordshire, where there are incredible professors who have wealth of experience in aging and LGBTQ+. Switchboard, a brilliant charity in Brighton, where John works, and Opening Doors, the largest UK charity for older people who are part of the LGBTQ+ community. Skills for Care, just a couple of examples. And yeah, this, again, thank you to Rebecca and John for supporting me in this project. And it's really been our great focus over the past year. And I hope this was interesting to listen to. I'm very open to contact about this topic. And yeah, we're currently working on developing this into something bigger. And thank you very much for listening.